Two, and one. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Jessica Corvo, and we are hosting a mental health extravaganza. What does this mean? This means that I've actually asked all of my friends around the world what they're going through, what they've been going through, and what they're currently doing. Each person that I've asked, I value, honor, and admire in some way. Now, today's guest is Brad, and he is a wonderful human being. We met years ago, actually almost 10 years ago in Singapore through an event, and he was one of the hired help. He was a singing waiter, and he was delightful on so many levels. And we became friends, and I've just been watching his journey. He's got a couple of children, and he just does not stop. I'm high energy, but I don't know how he does it. So once I found out a little bit about his personal story, it was a no-brainer. I wanted him on, to share a little bit about what happens behind closed doors in his world. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Brad is a successful business person. He is involved in other people's businesses. He has delighted people all over the world. He creates smiles, happy moments, and most importantly, helps other people connect in meaningful ways. That type of art is only based on people that are able to connect with themselves. So if you want to know the magic behind the man, this is what we're here to talk about. Hi, Brad. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
And it's all truth. I only speak the truth.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed meeting you. I know this. Well, the reason we're talking is because of our relationship, and I have gone through so many different points. Glad I stuck around. I mean, I've learned a lot and grown a lot because of you, in ways you don't even understand. Even this is helpful to me. I mean it. I mean it. But if you want me to talk a little bit about my kids, or do you want to?
Yeah, so I think we've already kind of covered like some of like the professional side. You're based in the US. Pandemic has been a little hard for everybody. I think maybe if you want to kind of give a little bit of a background on what your kids have, who are your kids, and we can start there, and then we can put it in context of the pandemic and how life has changed a little bit.
Yeah. My whole life the pandemic is like a microcosm of my life since having kids, because it's about adjusting to your situation. And so when we decided to have a family, I was 40, and it was very typical for a performer to wait until later and decide if it was a good environment for kids. And we felt that things were stable and we could do that. And so we lived in New York at the time, and I ran a company at the time that did corporate entertainment, and I still kind of run that company. I manage them and represent them as an agent now. And when we were there, we started noticing some things with the help of our pediatrician, that just little developmental things. And with our first child, Vinny, he's the oldest, she was concerned, and we kind of hit a bump or two, and then he seemed to overcome that. And so we kind of put those concerns on the back burner. He started talking, he was a funny little guy. When it came to my daughter, she had a more profound issue. It was much easier to determine that she had autism. So she couldn't speak at any point really beyond just a word or two, and then she lost those words. And so that was the oddest thing about it, was that she spoke earlier than my son did. But about the normal age you would expect, we went to the pediatrician and said, this is she's sorting toys, she's putting things in a row, she's doing amazing physical things that are not to her age group, and focus and concentration on certain things. It didn't make a lot of sense. And anyway, long story short, we determined that she had autism with the help of her. And that's when we started making life adjustments, because we decided we needed to really get this going and take care of this as soon as we could. So the first thing I started doing is just drowning her in love and affection. I wanted her to be used to that. And she is, and she desires it and really values it. The other thing we did is we moved out of New York City, much to my dismay, to Ohio, where I grew up, and got some advice from my dad, who's an educator. And through several steps, we ended up finding a really great school close to my childhood home, which I never thought I would ever live in again.
It's a humbling
And
moment when
she's
you
been
move back
going
to your
to a school
hometown.
called Bridgeway. Oh, you have, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's where you as a person struggle with your life goals and your dreams for yourself, and then your responsibility to others. The wider your circle is, the more people you're responsible for, the more you have to weigh those things. And
Absolutely.
I'm a driven guy, but I'm driven by, in my case, I'm driven by my responsibilities, but I'm also aware that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to do my responsibilities to my other people in my life the right way. So
Absolutely.
it is a
Absolutely.
balancing act. I would say, to get step away from the biography of it, because I could take all the time just telling our story. I just will take a pause and say, that's the crux of having a child with autism is, where do you end and where do they begin?
Yeah.
And it really is a balancing act. So if you and my up recently, I would have to say that my mental health has been something I've started to concentrate on, because I know myself, as Descartes, know thyself, but I don't know myself as well as I should. And I think there's things behind the scenes, behind the eyeballs in my brain bouncing around that aren't always completely healthy.
Well, I would like to
And
stop and congratulate you as
yeah,
well, because
yeah,
somebody, me, who grew up in the US, moved overseas, and then came back to the US, there is something that happens to you, especially when you're in the vicinity of your parents and you play the role of the child. So when you go to New York, you're the adult. And then when you come back, that's a funny thing that you manage internally. And that's normal, because this is, you seep into old habits. If you left at 18, you go back to your 18-year-old self. If you're in your parents' place, you're
yeah,
that, you're playing like that role, and you don't do it consciously. So
yeah.
I would like to honor that, because in context of,
Mhm.
prioritizing the health of your children and the happiness and wellness of your children, you actually were putting yourself in a position of extreme challenges. And the fact that you've been able to manage that, come through it, and overcome it, I would just like to take that moment to honor, because conscious or not, that's a
Yeah,
big challenge. So congratulations to you.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate it. And uh, this is good. I like the way conversations with you will go, because it's warming around in really cool ways. My A lot of my life, I had to overcome my childhood. That's not to say that my childhood was horrible, but you have to be able to reject the bad things and keep the good things. And boy, did I have a lot of things to get past. And and it's made me a better dad and a husband, and more understanding and more open-minded, because you don't have to be your parents.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean your parents can be the worst, the best, or somewhere in between, and that's
They
generally
do they
where
do
they
the
are.
they do the best that they can. They do
And
the
my
best that they
parents would,
can.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I had to learn to embrace differences in people. I had to learn to be more open-minded and more
Mhm.
accepting. And it's helped me be a better dad and more understanding with my kids, because they are
Mhm.
different.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so since we moved back here, we discovered my son was also on the spectrum. And as a high functioning, real verbal boy, he's
Mhm.
actually more challenging than Steffi. Now, Steffi's more like a baby in a 12-year-old body. She's cognitive delays, apraxia, and autism make her a really pleasant, athletic, simple, happy little person. Whereas Vinny is your more traditional person with autism, who people see as being quirky and really fascinated with one thing at a time, and then he'll switch. He has to have things a certain way. The kind that can be joyful and the most rewarding thing in the world, and also possibly the most frustrating. And so that's an interesting dynamic with him. Now,
Mhm.
to be a parent of two kids with autism means a person with autism, in my experience, are very, very aware of their own needs, to the point where they might appear to be selfish, but it's not that simple. They can show love and they can show care, but they also are really, really aware of the next thing they need. When you have two kids with autism, now you've got two kids with potentially different agendas who are both pulling at you, and who also don't understand that you're working from home because
Mhm.
of them, to help them. And so the boundaries are all over the place. And
Absolutely.
and it's exhausting. I
Absolutely.
have to draw lines in the sand all the time, and I feel like the bad guy all the time.
I would
And
like, but I would like to stop
yeah.
you right there because I think society conditioning, one of the beautiful things about the entire idea, concept, and you know, things to embrace about autism is that
Mhm,
people with autism don't play by society rules. They play by purity.
mhm,
So
mhm.
there is nothing wrong with stating your needs. That's actually the healthiest thing that anybody can do is state your needs,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
a healthy exchange is, this is what I need. You give somebody else the opportunity to fulfill that need. If they don't, then you go someplace else and you get that need fulfilled, assuming it's something you can't
yeah,
fulfill on your own. So
yeah.
that is actually healthy. But society has switched that around with, well, let's just dance around. I'm not really sure if I want to ask you because I don't want to get rejected. I don't want to offend you. And then it just manifests into this really kind of inefficient,
Hmm.
overcomplicated and cloudy space. And so I think, like, it's a blessing, especially if you're on your own personal journey of continuing to increase that awareness, having, two children that are like, yeah, why wouldn't I tell you what I need?
Hmm.
It just makes
Yeah,
it so much easier for you. Yes, frustrating,
yeah,
but it's also because you're shedding everything that we've learned and we've been conditioned as a society. Your children are kind of pure in that sense because they don't play
yeah,
by the same rules.
yeah. If you embrace it, I mean, there are things that I will never have to worry about with Vinny
Yeah,
ever because he will tell me exactly what he's thinking.
it's beautiful.
And the yeah, you if you are at peace with it and embrace it, it can act that aspect of autism is absolutely a blessing.
Yeah.
My wife is, and I don't mind sharing this. My wife is a stage 4 cancer patient,
Sorry to
and
hear.
she's very ill, and it does affect, the chemo that she's on will affect her mood and her outlook, and it really can be tricky. Now, Vinny, as a child with autism, he'll weather a stormy time and then come out on the other side with a big hug and let's go on to the next thing. That's actually a strength of a child with autism.
Yeah.
Now, you don't ever want to take advantage of that. They deserve
Yeah.
all the care and love that every child does.
Absolutely.
But Vinny is more accepting of differences and a stormy time, and he recovers quicker because he doesn't take it personally. And I think part of the reason is that we try to not take anything that he would do personally. We try to
Absolutely.
give him the acceptance, and it's really interesting because
Yeah.
you know, Vinny will come right out and say, "Hey, Dad, let's talk about sex," or "I have a question about this or that." And a 13-year-old boy coming up to talk to me with the things he talks to me about, and he feels completely comfortable doing it.
Hmm.
You're not going to find an average 13 typical kid that will do
Yeah.
that. But we have incredibly frank conversations about anything.
Absolutely. That's healthy.
And,
That's healthy. I mean, the 13-year-olds
yeah.
when I was growing up, they're buying nudie magazines and stuffing it
Hmm.
underneath their bed
Completely
mattress or
repressed.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll say, "Dad, I saw this on YouTube. What's this mean?" And he'll come up with this statement. I'm like, "Whoa, okay, let's deal with that."
Let's unpack this. Let's
And
figure out where'd you get that from.
yeah, right. But that's the one thing I have to say, both these kids are probably going to always live with me,
Yeah.
and and I'm going to be able to guide them through life in a very frank and open way, and that's not bad.
Absolutely. I
It's
think
not
it's
bad.
a difficult balance to make because I think within that nuclear system, within the confines of your house or maybe even your community, that is like the
Hmm.
norm. Finding that balance with what society has normalized versus, what is normal for you guys, I think is
Hmm.
a very delicate thing to kind of balance. And so that said, I would like to kind of shift into more focused
Okay.
on you because um, your children are beautiful. Your life is amazing. It's complicated, complex, and just beautiful in so many magical ways.
Hmm.
Focusing on you, considering your social conditioning, which isn't just you, it's everybody in the States, by the way. So it's
Yeah.
okay. There's nothing wrong with you at all. Please, I would like to
Hmm.
make sure that you know this.
Yeah.
As you're unpacking and as you're kind of stepping out of all of like that society conditioning or even family conditioning, how are you able to manage children being direct and stating your needs with you with the feelings of, man, I can't really tell them yes or no because I feel guilty? So you had kind of mentioned, setting like those
Hmm.
hard boundaries. What does setting a boundary look like for you in terms of children with autism or children on the spectrum?
Well, yeah. Now this. I'm going to admit some weaknesses about myself and the struggles that I went through to get to where I am. So
Mhm.
I took a personality test, a leadership personality test, a guy that I trust had me do. And one of the things he said to me was that I was very approval seeking. Now, this was 15 years ago.
Mhm.
Approval seeking, wanting to please people sounds like a good thing, but in my case, it wasn't. And it was because that can, if you dig deep enough, that can become an insincere motivation. And so I have become a stronger person and more able to voice my own needs and not be ashamed of it, and to say no and not be ashamed of it, and not feel that pressure
Good
from
for you.
society.
Snaps. Good for you,
Yeah,
Jane Fonda,
yeah.
your life, your way through life.
Yeah,
Good for you.
yeah, and it's been tricky, and problems can bring that on too. There are things that you told me today, the other day when we were talking about this, that I didn't have to share everything, and there are certainly things, really tricky, hard things that I can't share. I won't share today. Maybe another time. I'm struggling with how much to be open in public about some of the things,
Yeah.
but to suffice to say that I have to, with kids with autism, you can be frank and you can be very direct, and it's not going to most of the time affect them like it would affect a normal child. So for example, if Vinny walked in right now, which he very well could,
Mhm.
to tell me something about Minecraft, I
Mhm.
could say, Vinny, I'm talking to a very important person right now. You need to go away, and in about 15 minutes, I'll be available to you. And he'll turn around and walk out. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't feel rejected or wounded.
Mhm.
And when I come back out, I'll say, okay, Vinny, it's time for you now. Now, what is it you needed to tell me?
Mhm.
Um,
I think that's
that's a
healthy, by
difference,
the
I
way.
think.
I think that's healthy, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah. And if you, and I suppose, if I had what you consider a typical kid, maybe
Mhm.
that would be good on some level, or maybe in a nuanced way to be that direct. But
Yeah.
for Vinny, he absolutely needs to hear it, because if I even give him a small opening, he's in there.
Yeah.
And he's interrupted some pretty important conference calls for work
Mhm.
and just had no idea why I
Yeah.
wanted him to stop.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to nip it in the bud right then and there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. You got
Absolutely.
to do it.
I think it's very, very important because I think, even for my own personal journey, making that shift from the people pleaser, trying to be chosen, right? So I always want to be chosen, want to be chosen, want to be chosen. And then saying, wait a second, who am I choosing? Why am I doing this? Who do I like? How
Right.
do I feel around these people? And when you put that in
Yeah.
context of being a parent, I mean, they're your child, so you love them and
Mm-hmm.
you always want to look after them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't apply the same concept of can I choose you, because obviously you did choose them, right? But it's being
Right.
able to manage those emotions that crop up in the same type of journey with switching, making sure other people feel comfortable and loved and whatever, to making
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're in a healthy space. Because at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
if you always focus externally, there's a limit. There's always a
Mm-hmm.
limit. But if you focus
Yeah.
internally, it's almost like it's limitless. And this is where the unconditional comes from. And so people,
Yeah.
they switch that up a lot with self-care. I can't do this. No, self-care looks like saying no to people. Self-care looks like having those
Yeah.
hard conversations. Self-care is putting yourself in a position where you could be rejected, but knowing that at all costs you're not going to betray yourself. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, if you're not healthy, you can't actually help others, which
And
is
you
a
can even
hard
hurt them.
lesson. It's a hard
Yeah.
lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone through a day where I gave and gave and gave and gave
Mhm.
to an unhealthy level.
Yeah.
And at 6 o'clock, I lost it. I was in the wrong, completely emotionally not good to my kids.
Mhm.
And not, I mean, not in an abusive way, but certainly in an improper way.
Mhm.
I said, I would lose my temper sometimes.
Mhm.
And I realized to myself, I'm not doing them any favors by accommodating and giving and giving. Because I saw a phrase the other day, and I understand memes are what they are, but
Mhm.
it was something to the extent of, I can't remember. You might have even put it up. It was something about, you need to know when to say no, because you need to know when to stop giving, because the takers will never have a limit. You have to set the
Absolutely.
limit.
Absolutely.
And by the way, it doesn't mean the takers are bad. It means that people will take as much as you
Absolutely.
give, and they will never tell you to stop.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and kids with autism are even more like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, you have to set boundaries for their
Mhm.
sake. And not only that, Vinny, he could go out in society and have a normal job someday. He's a really sharp kid.
Yeah,
And I need to set limits for him so that he knows what normal limits look like and
absolutely.
what society expects,
You're empowering your
and
children. You're empowering your children.
yeah, you're
Absolutely.
training them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You're a good
Yeah.
Papa Bear. In case people haven't told you recently, you are a very good Papa Bear.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just want to say one more thing about that. Like, when I was a kid, I would watch little videos of animals parenting their baby animals,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Whoa, that's harsh." Pick them up by the back of the neck, throw them in the. But no, they were giving them, they were helping them survive as an adult.
Wings and
They
roots,
have,
wings and roots.
yeah. So it's, if your motive is love, and if you're communicating clearly what the boundaries are, you're
Absolutely.
helping them. You're not hurting them. You're not being a
Absolutely.
bad parent because you say no at
Absolutely.
all.
I think, pulling everything like back into context, having two children on the spectrum, playing
Mm,
by rules that are not normalized by society, having, the relationship between you and your wife, she's going through
mm,
her own different like health journey as well. So on top of everything,
mm.
there's a lot that's going on. So as you're in the middle of this whole entire, I guess, like performance, because that's a gentle word for saying it, right? There's all these different
Mhm.
pieces, moving pieces and everything. What does self-care look like for you in order for you to not get to that blow up point during the day? Do you have normal check-ins with yourself? Do you have just like moments to breathe? Do you have like affirmations? What does self-care look like to make sure that your cup is always filled with the right ingredients?
Well, I'm going to admit to you, I am really struggling with this. I'm not there yet, to be honest with you. I'll just say that. And so I'm not coming on here telling you I've got all the answers
No, it's a work
or
in
submitting
progress.
my
Everyone's
belief.
a work in progress.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm
Yeah.
spicy. My nickname is still Chili Patty for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of work to do. I'm not taking care of myself properly yet.
Mhm.
Um, I I'm not sure what that looks like, honestly. Um, I've gotten some things down with the kids, and I
Mhm.
know I need to do it. I guess knowing you need to fix some things and work on, not fix, that's a bad term. It like implies
Adjust,
that there's an
adjust,
end to it. Adjust,
adjust.
yeah. I've got a lot to do in that department, and
Mhm.
I've got a lot of self exploration as to what that
Mhm.
even means. I'll
Mhm.
be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to table that one for later, in the sense that the thing I could tell a person watching this video is,
Mhm.
it's okay to admit you don't have the answers yet, and I don't have all the answers yet. Now, I'll tell you some things I'm trying. Um, I every morning I get up. I try to get up an hour before the rest of the house gets up,
Mhm.
and I exercise really intensely for about 15-20 minutes to get my body woken up. It really helps my mind. Like last night, I had a horrible night's sleep, and I thought about just going back to bed, and I thought no, and I don't think that's a good idea. And I went down and I started hammering that exercise routine out. And about 5 minutes into it, I'm like, this was a good decision.
Absolutely.
It's You have to take time for yourself, or you'll feel used.
Mhm.
And when it's your choice to give, you can't claim that you're being used, but you feel like you're being used. So you
Yeah.
have to set the boundary and take the time. So I take that time in the morning. At night, after the kids go to bed,
Mhm.
um, I don't do any work, and I actually like try to do something I enjoy for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. So those two golden moments of my day are really important, really important. Um, However, I do need to work on during the day boundaries as far as my work is concerned.
Mhm.
And my boy is at home at virtual school,
Yeah.
so I'm his learning coach. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
Vinny, it's time for English class. You've got an overdue assignment 6.04, that's unavoidable. But if I can work on a ways to set those boundaries and organize things, it's going to help him and it's going to help me. So yeah, I will admit I'm struggling, but these are things I'm working on.
Mhm.
I am going to start seeing like a
Mhm.
professional person just to guide me, and in mental health.
Yeah.
I think that's important. A lot of men don't want to admit that they need that,
Mhm.
and I'm here admitting I need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
there you
mean,
go.
everyone
Yeah,
has
yeah.
all the high achievers. I think it's even harder for high achievers specifically because we've played this role for so long of always having everything together. And we don't have that
Mhm.
realization that we're not acting from strength, we're acting from survival. And so there's a big
Yeah.
difference. And a
Hmm.
lot of it's humbling. And I mean, it's not just a slice of humble pie, it's the whole damn pie. And once you
Yeah.
have that, it's humbling because the dynamic is so interesting because all the people that are around you, they know that you're the one that no matter what, you have an answer, you have a solution, you're going to make it through. And
Hmm.
people don't check on you specifically because you always find a way to make it work. And so
Yeah.
you aren't on their radar anymore. So when you make that initiative to, ask for help, because those are the three hardest things to say: I'm sorry, I love you, and can you help me? And
Hmm.
when you actually go to say, can you help me? People don't know how to respond because they're like, I looked at you for
Yeah.
strength and now you need help. Like,
Right.
what's going on? And so they don't know how to do
Yeah.
it. And so it's humbling even for them. And it tests
Hmm.
a lot of friendships. And
Yeah.
so I would just like to again kind of help give a little bit of perspective that you're doing an incredible job, because here you are back in the surroundings. Physical surroundings have a big effect on people. I mean,
Hmm.
it's nurture versus nature, right? So it's like you put a flower into a new garden and you can see it thrive. If you put it with a bunch of weeds, it might not be, as healthy. So your surroundings do
Hmm.
affect you to a certain extent. When you are going back into your childhood area, you could be dealing with not children, but like your classmates and stuff like that. If you've achieved
Hmm.
more success than they have, there's a little bit of animosity. So they might not really be cheering for you. I'm not assuming, but this is
Yeah.
something that could be happening, right? So you can
Sure.
eliminate the local friends support straight off the bat. The dynamic between parents, that's a dynamic that you can be doing going from adult to child. And that's again normal. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, you have two children, two different types of children that are on the spectrum. So it's not just about creating an environment for one type of, autism, but it's creating an
Hmm.
environment that is actually almost like two different households because the children have two different needs. And then on top of that, it's also holding space so that you and your partner can find what it means to be healthy parents and for like the whole thing. So again, listing all of these different things is meant to show you're doing something right. So you might not
Hmm.
understand what your self-care is, but you're doing something right because your kids always look happy. You always seem very balanced every time that we have exchanges, and you're still doing, those micro steps. So I would just like to congratulate you again. And for the sake of like the
Hmm.
audience, yes, echo your message that it's a process. Message, echo the message that even the strong need help. Echo the message that we don't have all the answers. At the same time, appreciate that you are doing a lot right, Brett. You're doing a heck of a lot
Yeah.
right.
No, I agree with you, and I wouldn't have done that in the past because I would the false humility would have kicked in, the approval seeking stuff. Tell me
Yeah,
more about what I am, you know,
yeah.
and I'm not talking. This is a tricky one. I think you've got a time limit.
Good.
Let me just say one thing real quick. My, you know, I'm talking about this as if I'm doing this alone.
Mhm,
You know, I'm married,
mhm.
but you
We're talking about your perspective, by the way. So that's like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
allowed,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
specifically to focus. Yes, it takes a
Okay.
community. No, you're not doing everything on your own, but we're
Mhm.
specifically tapping into your perspective, because part
Yeah,
of what a lot of people struggle with is bouncing between, trying to help other people. And we acknowledge that
yeah,
you're not by yourself. Your
yeah,
wife is doing the best that she can. The community is doing the best that
yeah,
they can. Everything is, but right now we're focusing
yeah.
on you. And that's what the
Right.
priority is. So it's not
Yeah.
selfish,
So,
it's normal. You're telling people your
okay.
world.
Well, that's good. Well, just to mention that another thing that might happen with autism
Yeah.
in parenting, and this happens more for the ladies than the men. This is an unusual situation here. Many ladies find that if they're male partners, if they're married
Mhm.
that way, they're going to withdraw, hide in work,
Mhm.
withdraw. Maybe divorce is a high thing in autism. So, and it comes down to how solid is your relationship going into this situation, and also your expectations as to what your partner is expected to do. I'm struggling with that too. Um, Another person, my expectations of another person may not match their capabilities or their own personal desires.
Mhm.
We're all bumping into each other in this world. We're not, none of us are perfect.
Mhm.
And so, my expectations, you temper your expectations and you concentrate on yourself, I think is the answer for me.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So
It's What a
I'm
wonderful
going to
world
say,
if everyone is being their best version and showing up to the best of their capabilities.
yeah,
Because if
I think
everyone's
that's where it
working on
boils down
themselves,
to.
then that's
Yeah,
you show up the best that you can, your children show up the best that they can, parents show up the best that they can, partner shows up the best that they can. It's
yeah,
having that, that internal reflection a lot of the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. For me, where it becomes unhealthy is when my expectations are giving me an excuse to not be the best person I should be. Like, you should be
Absolutely.
doing this. You should be filling this role for me. And it's okay to tell people what you need, but I think there's a very gray area there where what you say you need and what they're capable of giving you,
Absolutely.
it doesn't match up. And then what do you do as a person? Do you accept it? Do you
Hmm.
continue to push? Do you use it as an excuse to act out and be not the person you should be?
Yeah.
That's that's a huge thing,
Hmm.
and that's something I'm definitely dealing with.
Yeah, impulse
Without
control. A
getting
lot
too
of people,
detailed.
a lot of people don't have a lot of impulse control. Like, I mean, this is why we have,
Hmm.
instant gratification. We suffer from morbid obesity. We suffer from a lot of
Yeah,
terrible habits in the US. And,
yeah,
people just don't know how to manage their emotions and all of that. So I think,
yeah,
you're doing something right. And I definitely appreciate your time with being able to share this. I know that you're not just busy, you're productive in ways that people don't always understand. And so I appreciate you being able to shed light and just, let us have a little bit of a peek inside your world and share the powerful messages for other people, because I think at the end of the day, my personal hashtag stronger together is, you
hmm,
know, it's easy to get overwhelmed as soon as you break that silence and say, yo, this is what I'm going through. You might get rejected, but you are going to find your tribe.
yeah,
And as soon as you find that
yeah,
tribe, life just becomes so much easier because you're sharing different tips and tricks on how to navigate
yeah,
things. For me as a group fitness instructor, I'm like, yo, perfect. You said Steffi, she likes to work out. If that's like one of your
hmm,
things, this is a new shared thing. I teach kids Zumba, by the way. So
yeah,
you guys can do like, a fun like burpee contest or,
right,
like jumping jacks or something like that. And yeah, I mean, even those mini workouts and stuff are super important because you get those endorphins, flying through your body, and more importantly, presence. A lot of times when we get stressed out, it's because we're trying to fix a problem or we're anticipating a problem. When you do a workout, even those micro workouts, you get back in that moment. Nothing is more important than what's happening in that exact moment. So that's
yeah,
a powerful, if
yeah,
even if that's one of your few things, you're doing it right. You're doing it right.
yeah, yeah, and don't feel guilty for. Well, yeah, we're running out of time. I don't know. This has been what's great about this is that you are so aware of this stuff. I had no idea what we were going to talk about. I think this has been really fantastic, and I could have just talked about myself and my
I
biography
told you
and
it was
what I
going to
do
be a
for a
good
living.
idea.
Yeah, yeah,
Just gotta
but
trust
like
me.
it's the most natural thing in the world is to talk about yourself in a way that you think might benefit you later. Like, who's going to watch this? Are they going to notice me? But this has just been really, really productive and explorative, and I really appreciate it.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
really do.
It's my pleasure. You're
Yeah,
one of my people. And
yeah,
it's my pleasure to,
yeah,
I know that pandemic has been hard for a lot of people. And even, with, children on the spectrum, you probably took a long time to get all of these support functions in place. And then the
yeah.
universe yelled plot twist for you. And you had to
Hmm.
figure out all these different, support functions.
Yeah,
And that's not easy either, because when we're dealing with a pandemic where you can't touch and you can't be face to face, if children
hmm,
are on the spectrum, a lot of times they need that element of touch. And
yeah,
so that makes it even more challenging to try to find those different breathing points, because if your children are with their
yeah,
caregivers, anyone in the support circle for you, then that gives you
yeah.
a moment to kind of focus on yourself. Whereas kind of
Hmm.
like a kangaroo, right? If you're bouncing around, you got this kangaroo in the little pouch all the time. It's like
Yeah,
sometimes you got to have just a
yeah.
couple minutes to yourself, and that I think is just another dynamic that people don't take into consideration, because it's not just there's
Oh,
a pandemic, it's my entire support network has just fallen apart, and we have to keep all of these things together while it's making sure that all these needs are met. And it's incredible. So I'm glad that you're able to kind of
yeah,
share that. And plug at the
yeah.
end as well, you're still doing corporate entertainment and stuff. So
Hmm.
give us
Yeah.
a brief on what you're doing professionally, because now that we know the man behind the magic, What are some things that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
still able to focus on professionally?
Well, you know, I was working, which is a complicated thing. I was managed. I had run a company for about 10 years, and
Mhm.
I decided to. I talked to the owner of the company and one of my best customers, and I said, "Look, you know, maybe we can grow this in a more healthy direction. Do I really need to be managing a company, or should I be working on behalf of them and be motivated by success?" And so I ended up going to an agency, an entertainment agency, working for them, and I took all of my acts with me, and I continued to run that company.
Mhm.
And I learned a lot in those 3 years. I learned a lot, a lot. I can't even start to tell you how much I learned about contracts and about you know, about saying no, and just a lot of things that really customers need you to do. And I did get let go because of the coronavirus. I was laid off,
Yeah.
and I respected their decision. It wasn't There was no animosity there. I got it, and I was left with a really tricky situation because
Mhm.
I have to stay at home. My wife is not going to be able to take care of these kids alone. And
Absolutely.
during the pandemic, they were both here. They weren't in school.
Yeah.
And we went from having kids going off to various schools to being here all the time, and me, you know,
It's an
unemployed.
adjustment.
So what, yeah. So what I ended up doing is I ended up starting my own company
Good for you.
in the same industry. Yeah. And so it's Brad Wilson Talent, www.bradwilsontalent.com.
I love it.
And,
We're going to put all the
and I,
contact details. So anybody that needs
okay.
any support, on the
Yeah.
father journey, or more
Yeah.
importantly, also
Yeah.
to the financial side of being like the
Yeah.
business side of things, because you got to be in good standings in order to continue to serve.
Yeah. And this is, you know, it is, there's some reward in doing what you know. And I've got,
Yeah.
you know, 15, 20 years of experience doing this. But the reason I made that decision was primarily because I could be present for my family, not driving to Columbus every day and leaving them
Yeah,
behind, which is what a career change would have meant for me.
absolutely.
And so coming out of the pandemic, I feel like I've got my ducks in a row, and I'm just waiting for, you know, the economy and the pandemic to cooperate. But
Absolutely.
I've made adjustments. We've been doing a lot of videos and stuff for virtual events,
Yeah.
and I have been doing some socially distant entertainment options for people. I've learned a lot about that. And I feel confident that going forward, I'm going to be able to thrive, still do great for my customers, what they
Yeah.
expect, but be present for my family. And so that's the decision I made. The professional decision is both gratifying for me personally,
Yeah.
beneficial to my customers, but more importantly, I'm not abandoning my family.
Absolutely.
And
I love it.
yeah,
I
so
love
that's
it.
the decision I made. And the technology, the time that we live in allows this to be possible. 10 years ago, this isn't a possibility,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
today it is.
Well, now we
Yeah,
just
so
we just
that's what I did.
expanded all your offerings so people can hire you for,
Yeah.
different events and for
Hmm.
any kind of like
Yeah.
workshops. And
Yeah.
now that we're talking about, the father journey, I think is such a
Hmm.
powerful thing because there's not that many people that are willing to talk about the father journey. So you're
Yeah.
going to be high in demand. There's little supply and there's high demand. So all the people are going to be
Sure.
channeled your way now. So it's going to be another
Oh, thank you.
element of people being able to retain your services for different things. So Brad, thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time, making
Yeah.
the time, more importantly, to have this conversation, because I know you have so many things happening. And I really appreciate, especially in context of mental health awareness and just,
Yeah.
big takeaways are roll with the tides, always make sure to take
Hmm.
care of yourself. Not perfect, but it's a perfect life.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll
All right.
drop all the contact details so everyone can get in touch with you. And we
Okay.
already know they fell in love with you. So now it's just a matter of how they're going to engage with you.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks so much, Jess. I really appreciate it. You're the best.